Hey, Matt Noren at the Community Workbench. I proudly sponsor the Community Workbench and everything that it represents for local entrepreneurs. And speaking of which, I am a local entrepreneur. I am a realtor with Remax Bell Park in Hayville, Connecticut. Fully licensed in Connecticut to do commercial, rentals, and residential. I absolutely love my job, love working with clients. So if you are in any need for a realtor, please give me a call 860-428-6534. Your dreams are my job. Welcome to the Community Workbench. This is Matt Norton and Kyle Morrissey. We are the hosts of the number one podcast in my basement. At the bench, we try to repair the sense of community. So every week, we bring you small businesses, entrepreneurs, community leaders, charities, and pretty much whoever we feel like talking to. And this week, we have the privilege of talking with the Quiet Corner Speech and Language, a private practice owned by Christina Pillar Cook. Hi, Christina.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm very good. How are you?
Good, good. Please don't pick on my grandma.
No judgment. No judgment.
I will judge.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for coming on and sharing this with us, because I honestly, this is like one of those ones that you kind of know that they're out there, but you don't, it's not like a restaurant that you see all the time. So it's kind of cool. I love those at-home businesses that are off some beaten path or whatever. So that's really cool.
Awesome.
So now you're a speech pathologist?
Yes.
Okay. I said that right?
Yes. Actually, our really pretentious title is actually speech language pathologist.
Okay.
So you might see SLP, or most people hear speech therapist.
Yeah.
And know kind of maybe something about what that is.
Gotcha.
So that's what I am.
Nice. How long have you been doing that?
Since 2006.
And you're based out of Woodstock, right?
I am. Well, I live in Woodstock, but I do home visits
Yeah.
for my job. So I go to people's homes, or I meet them at the park or the library or wherever it is that we need to work on communication. So, but my home base is Woodstock.
Gotcha. What is like your educational background? What's required of becoming a speech language pathologist?
Well, the master's degree is the entry level degree, so you can't practice with anything less than a master's degree. I had a bachelor's degree in a totally different field. So when I went back to grad school, typical master's program would be 2 years, but I needed to do an extra year to get like the prerequisites. So then after you do grad school, you have to pass the praxis, which is like a test that a lot of different fields have. Like teachers, I think, also have to pass a praxis, but it's specific to speech. So that's just like a national exam. You have to do what's called a 9-month clinical fellowship, which is if you're working full time. If you're working part time, it's a year. And that's basically where you're working under a licensed and certified speech pathologist who's basically just guiding you, because the time that you're in grad school is like really not enough to learn everything you need to know.
Gotcha.
And then if you successfully complete that and your praxis exam, then you can get certified by our national organization. And then you need to have your Department of Public Health license from the state of Connecticut. And if you want to work in the schools, you have to have a teaching license as well.
Oh my gosh.
What is the public health thing?
They just regulate certain professions. So speech pathologists have to have a license through the Department of Public Health. And then we have to pay a licensing fee every year because, of course, the state needs their cut. And we have to have a certain number of continuing education units the licensing is you pay for it every year, but it's every 2 years you have to have 20 CEU credits. So they're just monitoring that you're doing that and staying up to date on the research and whatnot.
Yeah. They just finally combined 2-year payments and license renewal for realtors.
Oh, okay.
It was the same thing. You pay every year, but you only have to renew every other year.
Okay.
And it was like, kind of weird. Now they just like doubled it and make you only pay every 2 years or something like that now.
So Connecticut, the license fee is $205 a year. Massachusetts is $68 every other year. And then our national organization is $225, I think.
Yeah.
So-
Are you in both states? Are you licensed
Yeah.
in both states? Nice.
Yep.
And as like you go to homes, you like pick a radius, or you just
Yeah.
where the work is.
I try to stay within about a half hour or so of my house in Woodstock because,
Mhm.
I won't necessarily be driving, from one house that's to the next that's right down the road. I do have some families that are right down the road from each other, but of course they're never available on the same day or time. So I try to keep it about a half hour or so.
Yeah. And now, like, how long is a session usually with you? Is it like
50 minutes.
50 minutes? Okay.
Mhm.
So you don't go for like 2-3 hour type
No.
of things. So you're doing like multiple clients per day.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah.
So, and you have a pretty full schedule, or you like booked way out, or?
I am, but I also, not related to my work as a speech pathologist, I'm also what's called an educational surrogate parent with the State Department of Education. So I basically am an educational advocate for kids with special needs that are foster kids.
Oh, okay.
So I do that in addition to my work as a speech pathologist. So my days are typically mixed. I'm usually doing both.
And what does that entail, to go to their houses and?
Nope. So I have to go out to their school twice a year to either meet with them or observe them. And then anytime there's a school meeting regarding their special education plan, I have to attend that. So some kids I'll have, 2 observations a year and like 1 meeting. And then I have like some kids that are like, I can represent them up to age 22. So if they're older and they have really significant special needs, especially if they're like behavioral, we might have a meeting like once a month.
Oh, wow.
So some kids are like super easy peasy, and then others are just a lot of meetings
Yeah.
and a lot of paperwork.
Yeah. Is that, I mean, you're only meeting with them for observation twice a year. Does that mean that it's not like I would think your clients with speech pathology, that would be like more interactive?
Oh, yeah.
More
And so,
often?
like, a lot of times with my older students, like if they're high school students, I'm going to like sneak into the classroom to observe them so they don't feel like singled
Right.
out.
Yeah.
Nobody knows why you're.
Yeah, because they don't want
Yeah.
people to know that someone's there watching them, So I'm usually just sitting in the back, doing my little observation and then scooting out.
Yeah.
And like I might also have a preschooler. So maybe I'll go into the classroom and play with them for a half hour during their circle time or their center time,
Yeah.
So it just really depends on the age and the needs.
Yeah. Nice. Is there any like specific things that you work on, like ailments? I don't know. There's like lisps and speech impediment type things. Is there like a list? Is it like a menu service?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, we do have a really big scope of practice in our field, but I don't. I do have one kiddo who's in 3rd grade, and he does have a lisp, so we do work on that. But I also have like a 14-year-old who has multiple disabilities, and he's autistic and nonverbal. So we work on different ways of trying to communicate, using a communication device with like voice output, using buttons that he can hit and it'll speak for him, using pictures, objects, like all sorts of, just trying to give him a way to communicate. I do work with a lot of kids that are autistic, so it just depends on, some of them are talking, some are not. I work with a lot of toddlers that some will end up being late talkers and some will end up having language impairments. So a lot of it is trying to like use strategies and techniques to get them to communicate in different ways. Some of them aren't using gestures. So if they want something, they're just going to cry and you don't know what it is. So you have to teach them, you can point to it or you can repeat this word after me or whatever the case is. And some kids just don't understand what you're saying to them. So then you have to work on their auditory like comprehension as well.
yeah. So do you do the birth to 5 program too when they're not talking yet?
I did work in birth to 3 for about 20 years. I don't currently have any birth to 3 clients, but I have contracted with birth to 3 agencies to provide those services in the past. And I've had kiddos in that age range that I've worked with privately as well. That's sort of my passion, is the little ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, do you get clients that are high school and they're like rolling their eyes at you, like, why am I here, kind of thing?
Yeah,
That
not
kind of
typically because, I have had, I did have one high schooler who I had actually worked with him when I contracted with the elementary school as well, like a number of years prior, and he still had some residual like speech issues where he was hard to understand. So I did work with him for a period of time. But at a certain point, especially like when you're an older teenager, you can't make somebody do something they don't want to do. So, and most parents aren't going to want to pay me to show up to their house every week and their kid, like refuse to work with me. So if I've ever had a kid that, is getting older and really showing that they're not invested, then I have that conversation about, this may not be the best time, or you could always try taking a break and see how they feel in a few months. If something comes up and motivates them to work on their speech, give me a call. I'm still here, but we don't want to waste people's time. And if they aren't invested in it, you can't make them do the work.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Huh. It's interesting. What made you want to get into this field?
I was working, I had gone to school in New York, just north of New York City, and I was working as a video editor, and I really loved it, but I was spending, 10 or 12 or 14 hours a day in front of a computer doing a lot of work by myself. And sometimes I would have clients and they'd sit with me and I'd make their videos for them, but a lot of it was just solo work. And I'm a very people person, and I've always really loved kids. So then I started thinking about like what other majors had my college had that like maybe there's something that would be a better fit for me. And I found the field and I reached out to some people and met with them and asked them what their day is like, and decided to quit my job and give up my apartment and move back home and take a really big leap of faith, but it's obviously worked out really well.
That's awesome. Did you go right into private practice right after, or did you work for someone before?
Yeah. So when I was in grad school, I was working for a Brett to 3 agency in Mansfield Center, and they've since closed down a number of years ago. But after I graduated, I did that clinical fellowship year that I talked about with them, and I worked for them for about 3 years after I graduated. And then I took a position with Manchester Public Schools, and I was with them for about 3 years when I decided to start my practice.
Is it because it was too far away, or you just wanted to be an
No, it was
entrepreneur?
because of reasons that I will not discuss on air.
Okay.
Some things that I was not okay with,
Yeah.
but
So
that's all I'll say.
You wanted more control over what you did with your clients and how you taught, I'm sure. Something
Sure,
like
we'll
that.
go with
Okay. That sounds nice. Well, that's cool. So now, like, what is it, like a 40-hour week? Is it like different all the time?
Yeah, I mean, every day of the week is different. Like today, I spent a lot of time doing that surrogate work for the state during the morning and afternoon, and then I only had 2 clients this evening. It'll be the same thing for me tomorrow. I don't have any meetings, so I'll spend a lot of time. The surrogate work is a lot of paperwork and filing and, sending tons and tons of emails and keeping track of lots of things and dates and, compliance and all of that. And I'll have 1 client tomorrow afternoon, but then on Wednesday I'll have 5 clients,
Oh, wow.
so,
Okay.
and then a lot of times, there might be a week where I have 4 or 5 meetings for the surrogate cases. And so it's really every day is very different.
Wow. So that's kind of nice too, in a way, right? Like
Yeah.
one day you're doing paperwork.
Yeah.
Mountains of paperwork.
Yeah, but it can also be sort of a nice break because, you put a lot of miles on your car,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so getting to sit home for a few hours, business from the top up in pajama bottoms, so those Zoom meetings,
Yeah, yeah. The state has a way of making a lot of paperwork for
Yep.
for things that in the private sector you don't need paperwork for.
Yes, they do. But I wouldn't do it if I didn't love it. So,
Right.
yeah.
Now this means you must be doing more nights and weekends with your clients.
No, I don't do nights or weekends.
Oh, really? So
No.
it's not an after-school thing. It's,
Well, like the kiddo that I saw before I came here tonight, I finished up with her at 5, and she's by far my latest
okay.
kiddo.
But,
Usually done, because I do have a number of school-age kids right now, so, usually done close to like 4.
I mean, what's it like getting a kid that just got home from school to do more
Yeah.
stuff they may not want to do?
Yeah, that's a great question. I try to do everything play-based. So, like,
Oh, okay.
the first kiddo I saw today is in pre-K, but he is 4. And we work on his speech, which is really, really hard for him. He's very hard to understand. And so there are some times when he's not super happy about it, but we work we play Legos and we take breaks where we race his cars around his house, and we use iPad apps if we can that have built-in reinforcement, and I try to play as much as we can while we're working.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So you get to play with kid games. That's awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
Is there like ever like a writing part of it? Do you do any of that, like when you're helping them to like hold a pencil and write stuff too? Is that like part of it? Or-
No, so I wouldn't help a kiddo like learn how to hold a pencil or anything like that. Like that would be like an occupational therapy
Okay.
task. And most of the kids that I work with are not not necessarily able to read or write, so we don't necessarily do a lot of like writing. That is in the scope of practice of a speech therapist to work on written communication and written structure and whatnot. And I did a lot of that in the schools, but it isn't really something that I do
A lot,
often with
just
my
'cause of the-
kids.
yeah.
Yeah, because their ages or their level of development or their needs.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's wild. Do you have any favorite schools?
Favorite schools? I don't know that I have any favorite schools. I did provide services as a contractor for 5 years in Woodstock Elementary.
Okay.
And so that was nice. It was a lovely little school. And my daughter was there for part of that time as well. So she'd leave me, she'd call them, she's going to be embarrassed. She'd call them little love notes, So she was little at the time.
Yeah,
so she'd write me a little something and leave it in my box, in my mailbox or something,
cool.
So that was nice.
That's cool.
But these days, if I'm in a school, it's typically like for a student observation for the surrogate work. So I'm not really, doing a lot of work with schools at this point.
Yeah, I know a certain set of siblings that were, when they were young, the older sister would speak for the younger brother, and they had to have someone from birth to 5 come in and help him because he didn't talk.
Yeah.
And when they did the orientation and first met him, the sister was answering questions for him
Yeah.
to the point where the father had to take him out.
Yeah.
Take her out.
Yeah, that happens, and it happens a lot. So then you have to learn how to be diplomatic when talking to parents and being like,
Get your other kid out.
yeah, maybe we can give sister something to do. But if you can find a way to work that child into the sessions and make them feel like they're helping,
Oh, okay.
that can, like, hey, can you help me teach little Johnny how to ask for this? Sometimes they really like that, but that can be a definite challenge.
Yeah.
Trying to get the older sibling to, back off for a minute. They mean well. They don't know, that it's a challenge, but
Right. Yeah. And then, they're the older siblings, so they just feel
Right.
like
right.
it's important for them to do this.
Exactly.
Speak for 'em.
And if you say little Johnny wants a cookie, then maybe you'll get a cookie too.
Right.
So
Right.
they know what they're doing.
I get that now.
So we know all of their tricks.
No motivation. So you brought us these cards here.
Yes.
And, Kyle and I both taped them onto the microphone. If you're not watching, so that you can see. Can you just kind of explain to us these gifts?
Yeah.
Or I'm speaking real well.
So
Real good.
yeah, so each card says your name in the International Phonetic Alphabet. So the International Phonetic Alphabet is just a way of representing different speech sounds so that if somebody from, another country that doesn't know the English sound system saw your name in writing, they would know how to pronounce it. So that's why you have like that AE that looks like it's attached. And like your AI should also be a little bit more attached, but limitations of computers.
Kyle is more like AI.
Yeah. So.
Except for the young
That's
part.
Oh man.
Well, thank you so much for bringing these things on, because that's just really interesting. I didn't even know that there was an international phonetic alphabet.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So so it's universal for every country.
I'm not sure if I can answer that, but I think it's supposed the point of it is supposed to be that if you have a different sound system in your language than another person, that you still know how to pronounce
Their name.
what's written.
Yeah.
So you can write you could write an entire paragraph in the International Phonetic Alphabet if you wanted to.
Oh, okay.
It would be really annoying, but because some of the sounds are represented by the same letter that we use, but then like obviously like the I sound in Kyle is not a Y, it's an
Right.
AI, and the ah sound is not a, it's that AE combo, so like, but the M is still an M, you know what I mean? So
Yeah, some of them are still
yeah.
the way they are. And then what are the slashes that
Yeah.
they signify on each end of it that it's
Yeah, that those are speech sounds. We call them phonemes. So this is one word. These are the sounds in the word. Basically what it means.
So if you wrote a paragraph, it would have slashes on every word.
So I don't typically use the International Phonetic Alphabet a lot because I think it's one of those things you learn in grad school, and it's definitely useful in certain situations. But like if I'm giving like a speech test to a kid and I have to be fast, I'm not writing
Right. Yeah.
those symbols. Most of the symbols I'm not writing. Like the symbol for the SH sound is like a long, like a drawn out S. So that's quick enough, right? Because it's close to an S. But I'm not doing like these connected, I use my own sort of like shorthand, if you will. So, I mean, you would have to be like a little bonkers to be writing out an entire sentence or paragraph in the International Phonetic Alphabet, unless you just really liked that stuff,
gotcha. Now, like if you go into a dictionary and they have it phonetically spelled out, the words, is that the same as this?
It's not
or is
always
it
the
different?
same.
It's not always the same.
Yeah, so I'm not
Okay.
really sure. But there's also a lot of like marks that you can use within like remember how I told you like your L should have like a
Yeah.
little line under it? There's a lot of like different marks that you can use to indicate like how something is said. Like if this sound was more nasal sounding, you can use this type of mark, and we never had to learn those,
Yeah.
but it can get pretty complicated.
Sounds it.
Yeah, I'm guessing more like linguists would like
Oh,
people who
okay.
study linguistics would know that
Oh,
stuff
okay.
a little bit more.
I would have thought like if it's an international language, they would have it in every school too. Like you would learn it as a kid almost. No, as a way of
Well, you don't
communicating.
speak it.
Yeah.
It's just to-
Well, I don't know.
you can speak it.
Like-
You may have already.
Every time you say your name, you're speaking it.
But I just like 'cause we've never heard of it.
Yeah.
And I've been in other countries. Well, 2 other countries.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I think it's probably more like an academic type thing than
Yeah.
functional,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Do you do other languages, or are you mostly English? Or
No,
only
just English,
Just
yeah.
English? Okay.
Yeah. Because, like, again, to be serious, like most of my kids that I work with are not really talking. So we kind of need to focus on one language. I mean, if they're in a bilingual home, I absolutely encourage that. Like, there's a lot of research to support that. But I don't know another language well enough to be able to help. But I do. Part of what I do is parent coaching. So the parent is typically there and participating throughout the session. So I'm telling them, hey, you can do this. And here's your sort of homework for the week.
Yeah.
And then, I'm giving them strategies to use with their kid as well. So if they're able to speak another language and they want to work on that, they can certainly do it. I'm giving them the strategies and they're just using the words.
Have you encountered where they are a bilingual home and they speak well in the other language? Would you even play a role in that because maybe they just haven't learned
Yeah.
English as quickly as the other language?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I did have a family that I worked with, a couple of the siblings a number of years ago, and they were bilingual English-Spanish. And I don't really work with bilingual kids, but as far as I understand it, I think what the research says is that, like, if a kiddo is at an age where they should have like 50 words, right? If 20 of those are in English and 30 are in Spanish, they have fewer words in each language, but the total number is the same.
Oh, okay.
And so, like, that should be okay, right? It should
Yeah.
indicate that they're okay. But if they're supposed to have 50 words and they have 5, that's obviously a problem.
Right.
So I don't typically get those cases. I would have to either, like, do some research or, consult with some colleagues if I did. But I think that's what it should be. So the
Interesting.
total number of words should be about where they're at. It doesn't matter what the breakdown is. Does that
Yeah.
like kind of
That
answer your
makes
question?
sense. Yeah.
How do you measure how many words they know?
Well, how many words they know is different than how many words they're saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
Well, if I tell you to stop and you stop, that means you know the word stop. You can't necessarily say the word
Okay.
stop, but you understand it.
Yeah.
Did you understand that?
Thanks for checking.
Yeah. So when they're like really not when they really don't have a lot of words, I can easily say to the parent, tell me the words they say on their own, not repeating after you, but just say on their own, and we can make a list.
Okay.
You could, if there was a concern about their comprehension, you could do the same. Like if you say stop and you don't make a gesture of some kind, does he stop? Does he pause briefly? Does he look at you? You know, that indicates understanding. So if we needed to, we could make a list for that too. We can make a list for anything.
So it's I just didn't know if there was like and now when you know that information, you carry a file or an iPad and you have that in that kid's record kind of thing.
Yeah.
You can see an increase in
Yeah.
words, or does it ever regress?
You can have regression. Obviously, that's not something we want to see, and that can be a red flag. It can be a red flag for autism. It could also be a red flag for other things. It could be, if you have a kiddo that's had a regression and you're talking to the parents and you can't identify some type of like traumatic thing that's happened around that time, that's a red flag. Could be a red flag for autism. Doesn't mean that's what it is, but it could be something you want to keep in mind. It could also be something going on medically. So it's not something I see a lot, but I do see it. It's not unheard of.
Okay.
But it's always, any kind of regression is obviously a concern.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I just didn't know like if that happened a lot or
I
not.
wouldn't say a lot, but it does happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then like do you have I'm sure success is measured differently, but like how often is there huge success stories versus like I don't know, like college kids and going to college, like and like they get out and they're speaking freely, having or do
Yeah.
they speak out like you have like public speakers? Is that like is there anybody like get into the I don't know. I just like
I
I
haven't-
guess I don't really know what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I mostly work with the younger kids,
Right,
but I
right.
have had kids like in birth to 3. I've had kids that are approaching age 3 and we're trying to determine if they need to go to school for therapy afterwards. And the school meets with us and we go through the process and they say, nope, they don't qualify. That's a success, meaning they don't really need the help anymore.
Oh, okay.
I've worked with kids at the elementary level who, at a certain point, they meet all of their goals, and we do some testing, and we say we can't identify anything else they need to work on. They're graduated,
Nice.
go on.
Okay.
And then there's, I have one kiddo that I've been working with 2 days a week for over 5 years, and we're fast approaching our 400th therapy session.
Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
wow.
Because he's autistic and has a pretty significant language impairment and makes great progress. But when I started with him, he wasn't talking at all.
Wow.
And now he's 8 years old. So, there's a lot that an 8-year-old should be doing with
Yeah.
their language that he's
Right.
not quite doing just yet.
So how do you approach ones like that are nonverbal, and like how do you even start with someone like that?
So it really depends on what they're currently doing. So some of my kids, especially if they're autistic, aren't necessarily even using gestures. So like I said, if they want something, they might cry.
Okay.
And then the parent has to know what they want. So we might have to teach them, you can point to what you want. That's one way you can let us know. Or we might make like a little picture menu. Maybe there's snacks on it. And then when they want something to eat, they can point to the thing they want. Or we can hold up 2 snacks. Which one do you want? We can teach them how to like give us a picture of the thing that they want. Or obviously we're always trying to get them to talk, but a lot of kids aren't repeating what they hear yet. So then we have to try to work on their imitation. So it really just depends on where they're starting.
So is some of that teaching them the motor skills too at that point?
Yeah, because there's actually like a bunch of steps that kids go through in imitating things before they start imitating like speech words. So they might imitate like if you push a car and you go, brrr, they might imitate that before they imitate, speech words, or they might imitate making silly faces before they imitate, speech sounds and words. So sometimes we have to look at what are they not doing in terms of imitation. And it might be we're starting at step 1, where we have to just help them understand that there's another person doing something and that's fun and they can do it too. It can be really really going back to basics.
Yeah. And do you have clients that like don't necessarily have body function, or like, because that's a thing too, right? Like if you don't have hands or you can't use them, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
So I don't currently, but I have had clients like I had one student in the school system in one of the school systems who had cerebral palsy, so he didn't have control over anything really.
gotcha.
But also, he was really functioning. Like if we had to put a number on it, like maybe 3 to 6 months old, and we don't really expect a lot of communication, from a
Yeah.
so just cognitively because of the brain damage that caused the cerebral palsy, he wasn't really in a position where we were going to be able to teach too much of him communicating. So in a case like that, it might be trying to work with like his caregivers to understand his cues and what they mean.
Right.
So it really just depends.
So you do way more than just speech. It's just general communication.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't personally do a lot with like working on speech sounds and like speech clarity. I do have a few kids that we work on that for sure. But I tend to do a lot more with like the language part of it, of actually like functional communication, being able to communicate what you want, what you need, how you're feeling, all of that.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now, does that mean, do you know sign language, or is that not part of it? Is that not?
I know, I basically would know a lot of what they call like baby signs, So a lot of people will teach their little kids to sign more by tapping their fingertips together. I've not been trained in American Sign Language, but I know enough, probably a couple dozen like individual signs that kids can use for functional stuff while we're trying to get them to talk.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, communication's so important. You know what I mean? That's such a big thing that you bring to these families.
Yeah.
That's huge.
And a lot of times, like parents are really frustrated because they don't know what their kid wants.
Yeah.
And then that's really sad too, because they feel like they're not being successful with their own child, So we want to give them ways to like, obviously, we want to give their child ways to communicate. That's obviously really important. But we also want them to like enjoy their child, and
Right.
like have successful interactions with them.
Yeah.
So I've been in sessions before when the kiddo said their first word, and that's like really
Oh,
emotional.
oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially if it's like mama, because usually it's the moms that are there.
Do the parents usually sit in, if depend upon like how the age of the child?
Yeah, yeah. So for the younger ones, for sure, because I want to teach them how to work with their kiddo. Because if I'm there once a week for 50 minutes and then they do nothing in between,
Yeah, you're not gonna get
like, what's the
anywhere.
point of that?
Yeah.
We want to teach them how to work with their child so they can be, because they're their child's best teacher,
Right.
and they're with them all the other hours of the week.
Right.
So, but like the older kiddos, like if we're just working on, certain speech sounds that they're having trouble with, like usually I'll bring the parent in at the end to be like, this is what we did. Here's what you can do. Because it's a little bit different. I might give them like lists of words to practice. And if he does this, tell him to do this instead, that type of thing. They don't necessarily need to be there for the whole time for that. So,
Yeah, and sometimes, like I've coached before, I've coached my own kids before, and sometimes it's easier to have another coach go tell them what they're
Yes.
doing.
Stop what they're doing.
yeah.
Pay attention.
But, I get it.
Yeah.
Now, where do you see this going? Do you just want to keep doing what you're doing? And that's like you've hit your I love this.
Yeah. Yeah.
zone.
I think it's a really nice, as I had mentioned to you both earlier, in 3 days, it will be my 13th anniversary of starting my practice.
Right. Congratulations.
Thank you. So I want to say probably for close to the first 10 years or so, I was the only private, like sort of formal private practice
Oh,
in
wow.
speech in the area.
Wow.
And I have a colleague who started another practice. She has an actual office. It's also in Woodstock.
Oh,
And there might be, other folks who maybe they're not sort of like formally organized, but they, do things on the side, so to speak. But I don't off the top of my head know of anybody else that does home visits, and there might be. They just kind of do it like on the side. But I think it's really, I really love, I can't sit in an office all day long. I get too antsy. But I really love being able to go out into people's homes and into the community because that's where they're living. That's where they're functioning. You know,
Yeah.
if your kid is melting down every single time you step foot in the grocery store, you may need to teach them how to soothe, how to function in the grocery store. So let's go to the grocery store. If you really want them to be playing with other children, and working on their social skills, let's go to the playground. I can help support you there. There's all sorts of stuff that you just can't do in an office, and offices have their place, of course. But I really love working on that sort of like nitty gritty.
Yeah.
Like this is the functional stuff in life that like really, really matters. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Awesome.
yeah, I think I'm gonna keep doing that.
Yeah, that's cool. You get to get out and
Yeah.
be around everything.
Yep.
Basically, everything that life entails, because
Yep.
that's what they need. So.
And I mean, I'm 46 years old and I get to play on the playground and people don't look at me weird because I'm not there with my own kid and it's not weird. So, I mean, that's pretty cool.
Do you ever see yourself having like a protege, or because you were working under somebody at one point, do you ever see yourself like mentoring or doing that as well?
I have in the past. I've had 5 or 6 grad students that I've that they've done clinical placements with me through their college. I had partnered with Emerson University in Boston, and I think like I said, I've had 5 or 6 students over the years that would do a clinical rotation with me. I haven't heard from them recently, so it really depends. Like those students have always been part of their virtual program, so if there isn't anybody like in this area that needs a placement, I wouldn't hear from them. But they do sometimes have students in this general area who need to get their clinical hours in, and if they have someone that they need to place, they'll reach out to me. So I've done that before.
That's cool.
Yeah, I
What
like it.
does the clinical rotation look like for someone like?
They're with me for maybe like 3 months or so, the length of the semester. And
Like every day?
nope. So it would be like if I'm like, okay, Tuesdays I only have one speech kid, right? Because the rest of the stuff's like surrogate stuff. So don't come out on Tuesdays. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But maybe on Wednesdays when I have 5 kids, you can be with me all day. And, maybe on Thursdays you can see these kids. And they also have to work around their class schedules and
Right.
stuff. But we try to get like at least 3 days a week. And they come around with me and, spend some time observing, seeing what I'm doing. They have to learn the kiddos. I give them their files to review and whatnot. And then they just slowly take over more and more of the responsibilities. And obviously, since I'm not in an office, I can't necessarily like leave them because they're in somebody's house and so am I.
Right.
But sometimes I'll just be like, I'm going to go sit in this closet over here. So you can have a little bit of time to do your own thing and kind of figure out your wings on your own,
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool. They also come with energy and enthusiasm and fresh ideas, and they know the newest research, and so I get to learn things from them too. So that's pretty cool.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. And like, how many hours do they have to log?
Oh gosh, I'm trying to remember what it was. I mean, they have, you do clinical placements all throughout your grad school, but I want to say it was like 400 hours.
Wow, that's quite a chunk of time.
Don't quote me on that, but I think it's like about 400.
It's in the hundreds anyway.
Yeah,
so it's
hundreds.
Like,
Yep.
Not like 8.
No, no. Yeah, no, it's a couple hundred. And before you can even do that, like like if you do speech for your undergrad, you also have to do, I think it's like 25 observation hours, where you're literally just watching.
And taking notes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, and you've had that? Does that make it weird?
I haven't had the observation
This
because.
guy's just gonna stand here and not.
Yeah, right. No, that would definitely be weird. No, typically that would be like at a school or a clinic. Like I remember doing that when I was at UConn, and they have the speech and hearing clinic, and they would have, a room with one of those like two-way
mirrors.
mirrors. Yeah. So like you could see into the therapy room, but they can't,
Yeah.
or whatever it's called. They can't see you. You're like sitting in the dark room spying on them, But no, they wouldn't do observations with me because that wouldn't really make sense.
Gotcha.
Just because of my setup,
Yeah.
Right. But that's awesome that you had a whole mentorship type of program too.
Yeah. Yeah.
You ever worry about that being your competition?
No. First of all, no, but the other thing is that there are way too many kids that need services compared to the number of people able to provide them.
Wow.
So there's a lot of job security in this field. And honestly, like, I feel like the people that I know in this field are so amazing that like I've referred kids to other providers that have a specialty that I don't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I feel like in my personal experience, and maybe others feel differently, I haven't seen that competitiveness. Like we're all just trying to help each other out and help the kids, So it's pretty awesome.
Now, when you say specialty, like what else would somebody specialize in?
So there's a lot of different ways to specialize. For instance, like I do not work with stuttering. So if there was a kiddo that had a stutter, I would not be able to treat them. That's out of my personal scope of practice. I just have not had that experience. And it's not something that I would want to spend the time and energy to do all of that continuing education on because
So it's another level of licensing?
it's not another, it's just a way to specialize.
Okay.
Like, so I'm guessing like maybe in your field, if you were like, I just want to do commercial properties,
Yeah, there's
like it's just the way you specialize.
yeah, there's definitely different CE
Yeah,
courses for that. I see
yeah.
what you're saying. Yeah.
So we have a ridiculously huge scope of practice of things that we can do, but you can't do everything. It's way too big.
Yeah.
It's sort of like if you think of the medical field, right? You have so many different like specialists, right?
Right.
But in speech, it's like we can do all of that. It's just you can't functionally do all of that because you can't be like an endocrinologist and a cardiologist
Yeah.
and
Right.
Surgeon,
it's too much,
therapist. Yeah.
So yeah, so that's just one example. Is like if somebody called me and said, "Hey, do you have an opening?" and I said, "Hey, what's going on with your kid?" and they say he's stuttering, I'd be like, "Okay, call this person."
Yeah.
But there's lots of different things that I don't specialize in that I might refer out for.
Yeah.
So.
And you're plugged into a network. Like, how's that networking? Like, as a realtor, we go to parties and drink.
Yeah.
Network.
We did have a sip in the other practice that I mentioned in Woodstock. She has a couple times had like a little gathering, of people that are working in schools, other community resources, private practice. So yeah, just having been doing this for so long,
Yeah.
I also every year I put on what's called a sensory Santa event in Putnam for kids who, have special needs, maybe autism, and they can't like stand going to like a mall to stand in line to see Santa. So I put this on every year for families in the community. They don't have to be my clients. I mean, they can be, but anybody can come. And this past year, I was really lucky to have two other women who are speech pathologists who volunteered to help run the event with me.
Yeah.
So just kind of networking, meeting people through. Oh, I think one of the women who helped me this year had come the year prior with one of her kids and had introduced herself to me and said she was a speech pathologist. I was like, oh, hey. So, you just tend to meet.
That's
The
awesome.
universe tends to work in mysterious ways.
Yep, it does. And so, like, meeting Santa, right? Is it like in a quiet room and it's like a private, like, go talk to Santa?
Yeah, so the way I do it is St. Mary's Church in Putnam.
Yep.
They're really generous every year. I think this past year, because there were a few years that I partnered with an occupational therapy agency in Massachusetts to do it, so I haven't done it every year in Putnam, but they've been so generous to donate the use of their hall, like the downstairs, to me, and it's huge. It's also handicap accessible. So what we do is we put Santa on the floor, not up on the stage, and then we put a couple chairs out so that kids they're not like forced to sit in Santa's lap, and they get 10-minute
Oh, wow.
reserve times.
Yeah.
So sometimes kids will come up and be like, I am not going anywhere near that guy. And then
Yeah.
8 minutes later, they're like wanting to talk to Santa,
Yeah.
So and then I have different stations. Like I have snacks, I have, books, I have crafts. This past year, Designs by Dawn, which is another local business, was amazing. She donated her photo booth,
Oh, that's
use
cool.
of her photo booth. Her daughter came and ran it, and the kids could dress up and they took their pictures, and so it's sort of evolved this year until a little bit more, which was really, really nice because a lot of years it's just me running it, or like my husband might be there helping me a little bit, like, but he's mostly like running to get everybody food, when we're starving.
Yeah.
So to have help this year was absolutely amazing, and it's wonderful when people volunteer to do that because then you can provide more, and it's a completely free event. Nobody has to pay for it.
Nice.
So it's really nice when people will donate resources
Yeah.
to
Yeah, that's awesome.
to the community because it's for the community. It's for the kids, but it's also for the parents because if you have a child, especially like with autism, who can't handle like going to a mall, you might not get to experience that with your child.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not just for the kids, it's for the parents too.
Right.
Because they get to
Oh,
have
for
the
sure.
successful interaction and have like a normal childhood experience that they
Yeah.
might not otherwise be able to have.
Yeah.
So,
That is really cool. Do you have a number that you want to put out there or an email for people that want to get involved or use your services?
yeah. So it's Christina, which is CHRISTINA at quietcornerspeech.com.
You're already putting in the
Yeah.
cool. Quiet Corner Speech.
Speech.com.
Do you have a date for 2025 when you're going to be doing that?
For the Sensory Santa?
Yeah.
I do.
You can send it to us. You
Yeah.
don't have to look at it.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. I
It's
don't.
a ways away.
Yeah,
Is
it's
it usually in December?
yeah, it's usually
early?
like in the middle of December,
Okay.
first or second week of December. But I can get you the date.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
We'll make sure we try and plug that, you know.
that'd be
and,
awesome.
Do you have any fundraising events that you do ahead of time, or is this just kind of like you put this on your shoulders and
Yeah, I haven't done any fundraising. I will say that Bank Hometown has given me not this past year, but the 2 prior years they did give. I did ask for a small grant of like $100, and they did give it to me the 2 prior years, which was really nice.
yeah?
Baker's Dozen donated a box of coffee and like a dozen donuts. One year, Bill's Bread and Breakfast donated like a tray of muffins. And then the Anne Bedard is the name of one of the speech pathologists who helped me out this past year, and her and her daughter brought like 7,000 bags of chips and stuff, and they were like all gone by the end of the event. So they were very generous with their time and their help, and
Do you have to register for it so you have an idea of how many?
they do have to register. Yes, I use like the Sign Up Genius website, and they have to register for a slot. And I do ask them to let me know how many kids are coming and their ages, because I also give them all goodie bags.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I want to make sure I have a goodie bag for everybody.
This sounds like an amazing event. It's
It is. And it's so funny because I do a lot. Like I also do the Scarecrow display every year in Putnam,
Okay.
in the park.
Yep.
yeah.
And
Which one did you have this year?
I did one of the Beetlejuice ones.
Oh, okay.
It's like closer to the road with the sandworm.
My wife and her sisters did Wilma.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Down at Rotary Park.
Yeah. Yep.
That's a cool event.
Yeah, I love it. But it's like I also run with a partner. We created and we run the Woodstock Trunk or Treat every year.
Oh.
Oh, okay.
And so,
My
that's
wife's Girl Scouts have done that.
Is
Oh,
that
yeah?
the one that they were at the fairgrounds this year?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We went.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
We started it in 2020 because of COVID, and it was always at
Rose.
Roseland, but
Yeah.
they were doing renovations this year, so we had to move it to the fairgrounds. But between all of those events and then the Sensory Santa, like from October to December, I'm really like stressed out with trying. And every year I'm like, I'm not doing any of this anymore. And then every year it rolls by, and I'm like, all right, fine, I'll do it again.
Yeah, this is like we always say. I mean, there's so many entrepreneurs in this area that do amazing things like this, like what you're talking about. And I always encourage get a protege, get somebody that can take it on, because it's a lot of hard work.
It is, yeah,
And,
yeah.
it's a lot of time.
Mhm.
And if you can have like helpers that get trained, and obviously many hands make light work.
Yeah.
so.
I think that's one of the challenges is people really like we have 1,000 families that come through the trunk or treat every year, but it's essentially me and one other woman that run it,
That coordinated.
and her husband helps, and like Rick from Roseland Park has done a lot to help us over the years. So it's not just us. I don't want to, but it's primarily us, and it's really primarily her. Like I do what she tells me to do. But I think, one of the challenges is people love these types of things, but then they don't want to help with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's, yeah.
And it's a tough thing because, a lot of volunteers like yourself that are doing it and have been doing it for so long, you make it look easy, but you also make it look intimidating.
Yeah.
Like, especially I've coached with coaches that I'm like, why am I even here?
Right.
Kind of thing, you know what I mean? It's like, well, it's a lot of help, even if you're just standing.
Yeah.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yep. Or, there's parents that are doing other things, and nobody can do everything.
Right.
Yeah.
You
Right.
know, like they're helping coach their kids' team, or I was helping with my daughter's Girl Scout troop for many years, and
Yeah.
there are people that do the basket bashes at school, and everybody I'm sure feels like they're the only one doing something. It's just
Yeah.
that I think it's a small community of people. So anybody out there listening who wants to help,
Yeah, we definitely always encourage, volunteering local. So
Yeah. we get to put some good stuff out.
yeah,
You know?
and you make a lot of good friends when you do stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just it's one of those things. It's like you figure out, like who's got your back, and that kind of thing, and it makes it like a stronger, friendship or whatever. Right?
Yeah.
It's to me, it's a big thing because I'm kind of like you. I'm kind of a people person.
Shocking.
Where there's Kyle, who will go home now and not talk to anybody for another week.
Except for
There's
the
a whole
lady.
lot of extroverting.
The lady from the internet company coming down your
Oh, yeah.
driveway.
Yes, the people still solicit your house.
Yeah, no matter, yeah. I got to put up more signs.
That's
Oh,
funny.
man.
Yeah, so that sounds like a great event, and it gives so much. It seems.
Yeah. We usually have for the sensory Santa, I think we usually have about 30 kids every year.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
How long is the event usually?
10 to 2.
10 to 2.
Yeah.
So 30 kids fill that up pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, we usually have some cancellations, like, kids get sick and,
Yeah.
or some no-shows or whatever, but I think it's tended to be about 30 kids that actually come every year.
Yeah.
And maybe one or two of them will be clients of mine. So it's really reaching, far into the community.
Yeah.
And there are people that come every single year, and there are people that come and bring their 14 and 15-year-olds because they still love Santa.
Mhm.
And I mean, a lot of those kids can't do the mall thing, or they would get weird looks from people who don't understand. You can be 14 or 15 and still love Santa, so
Yeah.
you could be 30 and come see Santa.
Right.
I'm not turning anybody away.
There's hope for
Someone
you,
who-
Matt.
Yeah.
For someone who loves Christmas, the whole idea.
I don't know if he'll let you sit on his lap.
I'm okay with that.
It's Eric Brown is the chainsaw guy, and he's my Santa every year.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
He's the chainsaw guy.
Yeah, and Jason Beausoleil from Rusty Relic had been my guy a couple years too.
Oh, yeah. Rusty
Yeah.
Relic. Yeah.
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 Sorry, I'm writing all these down
Yeah.
to put them in the comments.
I can send you lists if you'd like.
Well, just like when we mention them, I like to say it. What was the other one? After the chainsaw guy.
Jason Beausoleil from Rusty Relic.
Oh,
He was my Santa for a few years. And then just because I shouted out Ann Bedard as one of the SLPs who helped, Alex Grigg is the other SLP who helped at my Sensory Santa event. I want to make sure I don't leave anybody out.
did I spell her name right?
Yeah, it looks good.
Wow. Good job.
I did it phonetically in my head.
Using the International Phonetic
Yeah.
Alphabet.
You should do that more often.
I barely used the English alphabet. That other alphabet.
Well aware. Oh, man.
But, have you heard me make up a word?
No, it's so funny. When I first started dating my husband, his family's from Rhode Island, and so like the first time I met them all, of course they've all got these ridiculous Rhode Island accents.
Best state in the country.
They're all like, "Are you judging my accent?" And I'm going, "Of course not. Of course I am."
Yeah, accents get tough sometimes
Yeah.
too. I worked with a guy from Massachusetts who talked so fast with a very thick, like Boston accent,
Yeah.
and for quite a few weeks, I said, "What?" a lot, and he was like, he thought I was hard of hearing.
Oh.
I was just like, "I'm sorry."
Well,
But
that's
he
when you
just-
smile and nod.
He was a really good carpenter, but he spoke so fast
Yeah.
about it, and I
Yeah.
was still learning.
Yeah.
And it was just like, what did he say?
We do talk really fast in this area of the country. Because when I go down south and people are talking much slower, I get annoyed. I'm like, let's speed it up.
The whole world slows down there.
Yeah.
That's funny. Well, I mean, thank you so much for coming on and sharing. If you have anything else you want to share, speak now. Or hold your speech.
What's the best way for people to reach you if they want your services.
Yeah.
So you can email you. We did have that.
Yeah. I do have a Facebook page. It's Quiet Corner Speech and Language. My website is quietcornerspeech.com.
Okay.
So pretty. You could Google me. I'm on Google. You know.
Yeah.
I think probably email is like the best way to get in touch with me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
And that is, again, Christina at quietcornerspeech.com.
Yeah. Yep. And I'm always happy, like I said, if there's something going on that I can't help with, whether it's scheduling wise or just something that I didn't work with, always happy to, refer out. I've had people call me and ask about services for adults. I don't work with adults, and I've referred them to places in the area. And I'll say, if that doesn't pan out, call me. We'll see what else we
Yeah.
can find.
What is the oldest age you'll work with?
Probably like through 8th grade.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. So 14-ish or so.
High schoolers are tough.
Yeah. Yes, they are.
Is there someone in the area that does specific with high schoolers, or high schools usually have their own in the high school?
I mean, a lot of kids will get services at school, and then the parents will also want private services for whatever reason. But if it's not a private practitioner, UConn Speech and Hearing Clinic and stores will work with, birth to geriatrics. Day Kimball Hospital does have an outpatient speech therapy program. Sometimes they don't have a pediatric practitioner, so you would just have to call and ask. Same with Westview. They do have outpatient speech therapy services.
Wow. Definitely shout out to Westview.
Yeah, yep. Just had some PT there. They were very
Yep. I was
good.
just gonna say, the sports therapy guys are so awesome.
Yeah, yep,
Had
yep.
Both shoulders.
Yeah.
And my chest.
Oh my gosh.
It's like,
Yeah, I was only there briefly. I only had like 4 sessions, but they were great.
yeah.
And I know they have, like, I had done just once because there wasn't a lot of interest, but many, many years ago, I had done an aquatic speech therapy class at the Y, where we did speech therapy in the pool. And I know they have a pool at Westview as well. I don't
Yeah.
know if they do speech in it, but
They do a lot of physical rehab with it.
Yep, yep.
Yeah, the aquatics and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
like treadmill pool and stuff, which is wild.
yeah, that's cool. I like it.
But anyway, thank you so much. Thank you for the sensory Santa, that thing that you do. That's huge for
Yeah.
the community. And just anything else you ever need, if you want us to plug something, you got our number and our email, and we'll do our best because
We'll respond sooner than we did last.
I think it was about a year. That's all right. That's all right. You're busy.
We're getting better.
yeah. But now I feel like we have more followers, and we do this a little better than we did.
Yeah.
Started.
I would think. I would hope so.
No, that's great. I appreciate it. I'll definitely keep you updated on any, special events we have
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Because like I said, it's all free. So,
Yeah.
anybody's welcome. And I do mean it. Like if you have a 30-year-old who wants to see Santa and has special needs, I don't turn anybody away.
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody should have that joy. So.
Yeah.
If there's any sponsors out there or people who want to get involved as volunteers,
Yeah.
you reach right out to Christina at quietcornerspeech.com.
For sure.
Thank you so much again.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for watching, everybody. The Community Workbench families are having their annual Spread the Love campaign. Please donate what you can when you can. These late winter months are the hardest for local pantries and food shares to keep their shelves stocked. So please keep them in mind. Try to spread the love. Even the cost of a coffee can go a long way in these places. Join us again next Monday night at 6 when we talk to Laura Jones, owner of Smoke and Mirrors Beauty Loft over there in Putnam. We'll see you next week. As always, buy local, hire local, dine local, volunteer local, and donate local.